Welcome everyone to Knights Arena Spike Down. My name is Keith LaFortune, and joining me is George Geddes. We're the weekly Challengers pre-show, covering everything Challengers. And let's not waste time. Let's get straight into it. We're going to start with the biggest topic of the day, and it's our power rankings. You know what, George? I can't wait anymore. I need to hear yours, because I have a feeling something is going to be amiss with yours. I'm just guessing. I don't know.
Look, I feel like I'm going to annoy people no matter what I say, but I do think the top three is pretty easy to predict. I think, considering the fact that these teams are the most notable and arguably the best teams that I've heard from scrim results, I would say the Guard, MAE, and Shopify are my top three. And then going into 4, 5, 6, I've actually got G2, FAZE, and then Breakthrough. Obviously, a lot of TSM fans are already going to be very annoyed at me because I haven't put them in the top 6. And that's mainly due to the fact that I don't actually rate TSM that highly. But I will digress. We'll kind of get into that a little bit later. But then I have TSM 7, Dark Ratio, Disguised, Turtle Troops, or Esports, and then Oxygen Esports at last.
Wow.
So I don't know if that's controversial. In my opinion, I think it kind of sounds a little bit controversial. But I think that these guys, especially in the top three, the Guard, MAE, Shopify, I think it's pretty easy to come to a consensus that these guys are the best teams. And I think it's fair to say that G2 and FaZe do deserve to be up there. And I think, excuse me, I think other teams haven't really earned that right yet. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah. I guess my only question for you is, do you think it's going to feel like TSM fans are diehards? Like, they are the diehard. Like, do you think they're going to feel a little hurt by your ranking, mainly because the name brand? Because let's be honest, was that event that Tarek Xlugwood won for this TSM team a fluke? Beating I don't know.
Like, come on, I don't think it's a serious event at all. You know what I mean? Like, it was a pretty laid back tournament. Obviously, teams weren't really going to show all of their amazing strategies at this one-off, off-season event, obviously. So no, I don't really take those results into any kind of consideration whatsoever.
Okay.
I think recency bias would suggest that TSM are playing relatively well. But again, I kind of go back to Challengers and how they performed last year. They weren't great, and they were very disappointing. They had losses to, I believe, like Ghost Guard, Xset. I think, I think they ended like 1-4 in the end. It really wasn't a good
Daddy
performance
Hayes.
from TSM.
Daddy Hayes is back.
I mean, I think he's good, but again, this isn't, you know what I mean? TSM's going to turn into a retirement home at this point, no pun intended. But I think they're, I think they're a good team. Don't get me wrong. I think individually they have a lot of skilled players. I rate 7 a lot. I think he's incredible.
Yeah.
Corey, I also think is very good. I think he showed his talents on some of the more aggressive agents. You got Raze, for example, coming back into the meta most prominently now. Jet as well, I think he's very good on. So I think Corey is going to be very, very good, and I think he'll probably be the shining star of this team. And Hayes obviously doesn't need to be the shining star of the team. True. That's not why he was brought into the team.
He might be though. Watch, I don't know. He's on his revenge arc.
I think he's more of the backbone of this roster, and I think that's fine. I just don't think they're really at that level that other teams are at. I think G2, Shopify, MAE, Guard, I just think they're levels above.
Totally.
And I think that my rankings do kind of represent that fact.
Yeah. I guess my ranking is very similar to yours in the top. I lose you a little bit in the middle, but still very similar within 2 or 3 places. And the bottom is kind of where I differ very heavily. So very similar start. Guard maybe at Shopify. Dead on what you had. Then I have a little bit of a wrench. I go Breakthrough TSM G2. People might be upset at that. I just think this Breakthrough team has been slept on heavily. I think they have the pieces to thrive. Sim's going to surprise a lot of people. Brock, I think, is going to be the highest rated Sova Initiator player in all of Challengers throughout Split 1. That's my take right now. I'm saying it. I think that guy is... It's crazy to me he's not on a signed team. It's kind of just where I'm at. And then TSM G2, unknown entities, but you kind of, as you said, with the names, have to put them somewhere. And then it goes FaZe, DSG, Oxygen. That positioning, it could be questionable from other people. And then I round up with OR, Turtle Troops, and DR. Again, I'm going to defend the DR being in 12th. I think they're streaky and very coin flippy. And if they come out with a completely different play style than what they've been doing for the last 6, 7, 8 months, I'm down for it. I think they have the talent. I think fundamental Valorant is missing from them. And I think they rely heavily on aim and pop executions. And you got to think teams like Oxygen, OR, they're a bit more fundamentally based. They still all make mistakes. But I see DR making more mistakes that teams capitalize on, at least personally.
Yeah. Well, I think the meta going into this as well will definitely benefit some of these like more faster paced, aggressive teams. That's why I think Dark Ratio will be quite good. I think Will especially is somebody that I personally think should have been on a partnered team at least.
Totally.
I thought he was very good. I thought he was very, very impressive. And he kind of got slept on a bit because, you know, there were role disparities, you know, on 100 Thieves, and obviously you had the opportunity to bring in Cryo, and you can't miss out on that kind of thing. Yep. And it was, I guess, a like for like replacement. But you know, I think that if Will has the pieces around him to thrive, I think that he could do that efficiently. I think he's a great player. So that's why I think Dark Ratio are quite high. I also think in terms of rating some of the teams that qualified through the Open Qualifier and the LCQ, I think it's more difficult to rank those guys because you can't really compare them considering they're all relatively on the same level. It's very difficult to distinguish those guys between each other. However, I think there's a big gap between like 1 to 5 and then 5 to 12. You know what I mean? I feel like there's
absolutely
a pretty big disparity between the skill gap. I think the guard, I would say probably the guard M80 Shopify, maybe G2, probably by far and away the best 4 teams there. And I think realistically, I don't really see a world where any other team can, I guess, break through into that top 4. But obviously, you have those guys as very highly rated.
I do. I'm going to be honest. It almost feels like Group A and Group B, the top 2 are locks, right? Like it almost feels like you're going to go M80 guard, whatever order, G2 Shopify, whatever order, and everyone else is just fighting it out underneath that. That's almost what it feels like. And I think that's why it's hard to give them an accurate power ranking, because until a couple weeks in, we're kind of guessing. So I think we'll see how that grows and how our power rankings, if they're accurate or not. I have a feeling we'll change them. Let's talk scrims.
So there is a reason why I think Breakthrough is rated quite highly. One of these teams that had to slug it through the Open Qualifiers. Breakthrough are one of the best teams that I've been hearing in these kinds of scrims. Now, the problem when I've been kind of collecting these results is the fact that the majority of the teams that are obviously differentiated by the groups, they don't play teams that are in their groups, obviously, because they want to save the strategies against those teams. So I'm, obviously going on limited data, but obviously you have the Guard, Shopify, M80. They're the best teams in terms of skill and actually, being able to kind of dominate the opponent pretty effectively, I would say. Obviously, Breakthrough, as I mentioned, highly rated as well. G2 is one of the teams that at the start I wasn't really being told great things about, but then they've kind of slowly improved over time. And I think that that's going to be a good project. I think that obviously they have a lot of experienced players, and I think realistically, once they gel, I think that this team will probably be a force to be reckoned with, especially. I guess. No, go ahead.
Yeah, that seems like the hardest part right now is like you're taking 2x teammates, another 2x teammates, and you're throwing them in with, an unknown entity in Oxy, who really, I think his raw mechanical skill has shown to everybody how good they can be and how good he could be. But I mean, you're basically building a team from scratch. And Imi's done it before. Can he do it again within a reasonable time frame? I mean, this first split might just be a wash for them in reality, and who knows? So,
well, he's brought some of his parts from his previous team, right? So I think that he knows that some of these players that kind of bought into his system before will buy into it again. It's just kind of how he would work with Shazam, and I think that pairing is very good. I think Shazam needed that kind of backbone when he was on the Sentinels. I think that is where the Sentinels team faltered, is the fact they didn't have like rigid strategic coaching behind them. And I think that when it did come in, it came in far too late for them. So I think that this G2 team does seem like a very good team on paper. It's just how they kind of work well together, and if they do kind of collide, how they kind of resolve those issues.
Yeah.
And I think one of the other teams that I've spoken to a few players about was Disguised. I've had mixed comments on Disguised. Some people have kind of told me they don't really sound that good. Others have questioned whether they're going to do well when they actually get into the matches, because obviously there's a lot of young talent on that team, and then you've also got Steel, who is a veteran. Will he be able to kind of, keep these guys under the ropes and then,
Totally.
I guess be able to achieve what they want to achieve? But again,
Yeah.
I think Steele's in-game leading can't be underestimated. He is obviously very decorated, and he has done this kind of thing before. So, it wouldn't surprise me if they kind of do well. But I think that when you come up against, the teams like the Guard, Shopify, all these kinds of top 3, top 4
it's really hard.
Like, it's hard to break through, it's very difficult to kind of take those guys down.
I'm curious where you think FaZe is at. Obviously, bringing in ROSSY, I think that's a really good addition. One of the highest rated players from the qualifiers, clearly experienced in his own right. My only concern with the FaZe roster, and I've always had this concern, is what's their play style? Is it consistent? And then my follow-up thought with them is always, do they have enough time? Because I feel like they always handicap themselves, giving themselves amount of time to prepare. Like, how long have they realistically had to practice with ROSSY? 3-4 days, maybe a week max. Coming into this,
it hasn't been long. I think ROSSY's been playing with them for, I think, around 4 or 5 days ish. Yeah. It's not been long at all. Obviously, Neptune was one of the players that they were aiming to go for. And then ROSSY became available, obviously, because the nation bombed out in the LCQ, I believe. So when ROSSY became available, and obviously they saw that ROSSY played incredibly well, they reached out, and obviously he went to FaZe, according to my reports. So the big question that I have with FaZe is, I do think FaZe have like 5 really good individual players. The problem is that as you said, I don't know how they play. Their play style is incredibly confusing to me, but mainly because I haven't seen them play. I don't know how they play, and nobody has actually seen them play a professional match since August, like last year.
That's so crazy to think they haven't done anything. No side tournament. They've just been dormant.
Shopify, it's not Guard. Like, these guys have actually been like playing these kinds of small tournaments.
Yeah.
FaZe have done nothing. So, like, we have nothing to go off of, really. So FaZe are a very big question mark. And, I think when you look at kind of the names on paper, you think, like, wow, like, this is actually, like, a really good team. You got Dicey, you got ROSSY, these guys are incredible players. Super as well, and you just sit there and you think, okay, you have all these kinds of great players on paper, but will they gel together, or is this just going to be one of those like scrim teams that kind of just go about, shoot some heads, don't have a strategy, and just kind of go out on a whim? It's like,
I guess
I don't know.
Time will have to tell with this one. I'm on the fence. Our power rankings kind of had them on the fence. Another team that, well, you had under the fence is TSM's coaching, bringing on Eng. I know you said you rate him highly. The curious thing about this is his title. Can catch everybody up with where we're at with this.
Yeah, so when they signed Eng, I think I wasn't surprised, because I heard about it a little bit. I wasn't really confident on it, but obviously this did happen in the end, and I think Eng is an amazing coach. I think it was absolutely like outrageous that he wasn't signed prior to this. This guy was arguably the most successful coach in like 2021. When he was with Gambit, they won like Challengers 2, CIS Masters Berlin, second at Champions. Like, how many coaches can you say has this kind of record? There's like,
how many is like a new game, right? It's like,
exactly. There's around maybe like 3 or 4 that kind of have, a similar record. But obviously, following the breakup of MEC, or Masters 3 Champions, he was kind of left out on the street. All these other guys joined new teams. and he was kind of the only one left. But as you mentioned, the role that he's actually going to be in with TSM is a little bit confusing to me, because it seems like he's the assistant coach. And I believe it's Data is the head coach, and obviously he came from Rainbow Six. And immediately I'm like,
his things, like, I mean, SI 2020 champ, I mean, bizarre is the word you could use, but I don't know much about the Rainbow Six scene. I don't know about you. Apparently,
I don't care about the Rainbow Six scene.
I know.
I don't care about Rainbow Six. I care about Valorant.
The curious
Eng
thing
is one of the Eng is an incredible coach. You put him as assistant, you are trolling. I'm sorry, but this is ridiculous.
Well, does that mean he's not in the server then during the games? It must be he's just watching.
If Data is the head coach of TSM, and Eng is not the head coach, and he's just chilling, like being the assistant, like strategic coach or whatever, I think that TSM have made a massive misstep, because I think Eng has the kind of he has the backbone and the ability to actually make a very, very good team. So, I rate Eng very highly. I think that he has the record to back that up. Obviously, European coach, highly successful. I think when he comes to North America, he will be, instilling some of these kinds of values that he had under Gambit, which led that team to being the best team in the world at that point. So, it's a big question mark for me. I don't know much about Data. I don't know what he's done for the team, but just from an objective standpoint, Eng is one of the most decorated coaches in Valorant. Why would you not have him as the head coach?
Couldn't agree.
I have no idea. So that's my opinion. But I will say I do give credit to TSM for actually, they have put in the resources to allow this organization to actually thrive in this game.
It's true.
They didn't get partnered, but they carried on with challenges, and they said they were going to invest. And here we are. They've signed an incredible coach, and they've obviously signed new players as well. So they are committed. It's just whether these kinds of pieces fit together and how Eng will be a part of that puzzle. It kind of remains to be seen.
Yep. We'll have to see as that grows as well. It's just like the ROSSY situation. First couple weeks are really going to be the determining factor. Let's now watch this clip together of Sean GARES' take on Shopify. Let's give it a listen.
Shopify kept a big part of their core too. And I remember Shopify. So Shopify during LCQ, I remember we'd scrim against them a lot. That team was really good. Shopify was way slept on by the scene. And I think during LCQ, they had 2 people get COVID, and their whole practice schedule and everything got, and they still almost beat Sentinels in LCQ. And that Sentinels team was really, really good. They took us to 3 maps. They were making runs.
Well, we heard it from Sean GARES, and kind of in our power rankings to tie back into us, because, we're just so smart. Shopify. He says top 2. I had him 3rd, and I think you had the same, but I mean, he's not wrong. The core is still there. They seem very competent.
Yeah, I think Shopify are very good. I think in terms of scrims as well, people have been bigging up Shopify as kind of one of the best teams alongside the Garden of 80. So, I guess it is a little bit of a toss-up between M80 and Shopify. Realistically, you kind of have to question whether these guys are kind of on the, if you were to put these guys in a kind of 1 versus 1 scenario, M80 versus Shopify, which team would win? I personally think M80 would win, but obviously, a Shopify could easily win that game. So it's very difficult to predict. But I personally believe that M80 kind of have more of the pieces to creating a better team, in my opinion. I think that M80 have a very good strategy and have a very good structure from what I've heard. Obviously, Happy coming in as well as the coach.
That is pretty big.
Yeah, I think that there is a lot of room for improvement in this team. And I think Shopify, I think there will come a time where they may hit a wall. And I think that they may have to expand their playbook. But again, I do think that M80 is one of these teams that will bring, I guess, I think that they will, I think they'll be one of these teams that will shock a lot of people, I think, because I think that they will be quite good. But then again, you kind of have to respect the fact that Shopify have been doing this for,
I mean,
they've been in challenges. They've been in the pro scene. You know,
I'm
they've
curious.
been doing very well.
They've been a core since
The Luminosity
June
core,
27th. Yeah, June 27th of last year. Vic, by the way, anyone who's sleeping on Vic, you're going to get a wide awakening. This kid is the
Vic is
real
incredible.
deal. He is one of the most polished young players I think the game has ever seen. He for the experience he has and for how good he's going to be and is right now, it's crazy. He's surrounded by CS guys. He's surrounded by a core that's been together for a long time. Very similar situation to the guard, bringing in Tex, right? Core that's been together for a while, building those fundamentals. I think Sean is 100% right. The question is where in the top 3 to 4 are they going to land? And don't sleep on Vic and Shopify. Moving on to the next one, let's talk about Vansili's take. Let's give it a listen.
Like, with TSM adding Aang as a coach, you're fighting for 4th here. You're pretty much fighting for 4th between Dark Ratio and or esports. And I think I would feel that Disguised Toast would have a good chance against Dark Ratio and or sports, but against the other 3, it's going to be very, very tough.
Well, we heard it from Vans. He thinks a coaching change shoots up TSM. So I don't know. I don't know, Vans. I don't know. Is that recency bias? That's the word you used earlier. It's kind of trickling in that clip a little bit.
Yeah, look, as much as I love him, I don't think that's right. I think realistically, you're probably fighting for, you know, like 3rd or 4th. I think the top 2 is pretty clear. It's, you know, I think it's pretty easy to make that assumption that the guard and MAE will be top of that group. But honestly, I don't know. I don't know if TSM will make this. You know, I don't know whether they're going to surprise me. You know, again, it really does come down to where Aang kind of fits into the system. I don't rate Disguised that much. I think they're good. I think Dark Ratio is good
I think that's
well.
going to be wrong, by the way. Just for a little controversy on the first episode, just so we can set the tension. I think DSG, I think you're sleeping on them. I'm going to be honest. I mean,
that's fair.
I think Clear and Exalt have bones to pick, and I think Gangsta is underappreciated in his consistency, and I think Ziff can be a superstar. That's my take. I'm also biased with having worked with them in the past, but I do think they're going to come in with more fundamentals than any other team that has been recently formed. That's just my opinion. That's my hot take to add on to that. But I see where you could be coming from in that sense. It's like, you know, you get complacent, you play with the same people, you get the same results. It's kind of, you know.
Honestly, if I'm being honest with you, I think Group B will amount to, I think MAE and the guard will fight out for 1st and 2nd. I think the guard will finish 1st. I think MAE will be 2nd. And then 3rd, 4th, 5th, I genuinely couldn't tell you who will finish there, to be honest. I think, you know, I think TSM will probably make it. I think they'll probably be 4th. And I think it will be either Disguised or Dark Ratio in 3rd place. I think that'll be a bit of a, you know, I think that's a bit of a hot take.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think Or Esports will probably finish bottom. I'm not sold on the team. I think it's good, but I don't think they're anything special.
I just need it.
You know, yeah, I mean, you know, it's just one of those teams, right? Well, you have to put a team last, and realistically, I think they will be. So,
I guess to add on to the topic of DSG, Clear did an interview, and it was rumored for a little bit, you know, Tier 1 orgs looking for people, Clear, you know, Demon 1, these kind of people and names are floating around. And in a recent article out on Fragster, he says, you know, I wanted to go with DSG because I wanted to be developed and become a better player. And he said it was a quick decision, like no hesitation. He knew he was going for leaving a salaried opportunity to the side and jumping in with DSG. So just give me your thoughts on that. Is that an appropriate decision for Clear? Can we judge him on this decision? Is there any talking points in this?
I mean, I think it's fair staying with DSG. I think realistically, if he was to join a partner team, he probably won't get a lot of game time. Just because I think the majority of I think all of the rosters are pretty much set now, as in the starting five. I think he wouldn't really have anywhere else to go, I guess, in that respect.
Mhm.
Not that I don't think he could. I think he easily could. But I think that Clear is one of these players that can develop, especially under a guy like Steele. So I think that is definitely something that he...
Don't forget about Ocean. Got to get him in there, too.
I think Ocean's great as well. I think Ocean's good. Obviously, a very experienced, comes from CS as well. So, you got a lot of these kind of experienced people to fall back on and help you develop. And I think Clear will end up in this kind of... I think he kind of... Honestly, he this is what I like to call the Scuba effect, right? And I call it this because Scuba was one of these players. When I looked at him, when I spoke to other professional players, I was sitting there and I was talking to them, and they were like, "How in God's green earth is this man not in a pro team?" Because you look at the way he plays, and like the role he plays as well, and you think, "Wow, like this is bizarre how he's not in any of these teams," And is he just permanently stuck in this like tier 2 limbo that he's never going to get out of? And that's why I have this kind of constant feeling of, okay, we've got another Scuba effect going on here. Because there will be big names coming in for this guy if he keeps up this level of play. Referring to Clear here, I think he is an incredible duelist. I think he showed it. Was one of the highest rated players during that open qualifier.
Well, to add onto that, I mean, he's also got role diversity. Played as Viper on Pearl, right? Like, not a lot of good young players can you look at and go, not only can he play duelist to a top level, now he can also have role diversity. So if you want to do duelistless comp and you want to experiment, like, he could do that too. So I couldn't agree more. I think we're going to see his stocks propel up, and then maybe this turned out to be the best choice for him. Now let's move on to... Yeah, I hope so too. Let's talk G2. We've talked about them a little bit. They got a new assistant coach in G2, DANI. What do we know about him? I hear he's a lineup Larry. He's going to bring a lot of lineups and strats. What else do we know about him?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, DANI was, I believe he worked with Sentinels for a while. He kind of has the, the previous understanding of kind of what to do, how to go about these kinds of strategic moves and, that kind of stuff. So I think in that regard, it's fine. If you're just bringing in someone to kind of be that, lineup Larry, I guess, if you want to call him that, or someone to kind of just find these kinds of anti-strats, something to kind of take the load off of the load off of Imi and Shazam's back. I think that's fine. Again, it's something that Shazam didn't really have under Sentinels. All things considered, Shazam didn't have this kind of incredible backing from like loads of different staff members, whereas G2 is actually giving him, G2's giving him everything he wants pretty much. He's got a very good coach, and now he has, quite a good assistant coach to go along with it, or strategic coach, whatever role Danny's going to be in that team.
And a teammate who watches his streams. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, that's another talking point, I guess, about Oxy. But hopefully that beef is settled.
I'd hope so.
No, I think that Danny's obviously going to be a good improvement on the team. I think, and even when you add anybody to the backroom staff, if they are actually good at their job, realistically, they'll improve the team dynamic. And I think if Shazam can replicate the formula that he had with Sentinels and add the stuff that he was missing with Sentinels, he has a very good team here. And personally, I think he has the players to do it. Obviously we don't have a tens, so, there's a lot of, question marks is if Oxy's kind of going to, live up to that role in tier 2, it kind of has to be seen.
Totally.
And this will be the big test for him. I think, coming up against some of these other massive teams in tier 2, whether Oxy can kind of continue his good form. He has been playing well.
Well, you have to consider too, I mean, a new meta's coming in. So I'm curious, how's this meta going to affect not only G2, but all the teams, right? Chamber, I mean, he's been nerfed to the ground. the ground.
Yeah,
I
good.
think 3%
Yeah.
pick rate over Challenger qualifiers, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Do you
Rest
think
in
we'll
piss.
see?
I'm glad he's gone.
What?
I hate him.
You don't think we'll see a little Chamber?
I hate
or
Chamber. The
Okay,
Chamber
what would you
meta
rather,
was
a Chamber
one of the
or a
worst
KJ? Come
metas
on.
I've ever seen in my life. I hate
Aw,
Chamber
man.
with a passion. He's awful. I hate him. The Chamber meta and the pre-nerf Astra meta were some of the most disgusting Valorant I have ever seen in my
Astra
life.
meta was kind of nasty. Yeah.
The pre-nerf Astra was awful.
Yeah.
That honestly, these agents were just so broken, and they destroyed pro play. It was terrible. But no, I'm happy that Chamber's gone. I will shed no tears. I don't like him at all.
Yeah.
I'm glad he's out. I think he is fundamentally a bad agent for the game. But again, I think that obviously with him gone, you know, you have more duelists coming into the meta. Obviously, Jet is now, you know, very prominent once
She's
more.
back.
People are realizing that, you know, this is a comfort agent for a lot of these pros. And I think that that's something that we need to kind of take into consideration. You know, so I think that is going to work to the benefit of, you know, some of these teams, especially some of the players that were more comfortable on a Jet rather than a Chamber. And I think also because of Chamber going out of the meta, obviously we have, you know, agents like Killjoy coming in as well. Obviously she also had some slight buffs as well. But I still think we'll still see some of the similar agents that we've seen before. I think KO is also very prominent. I think KO will be very useful in this meta as well. Once they fix the
someone pick
knife
a
bug,
Harbor.
please
Riot
someone
Games. Pick a Harbor too, by the way.
I think Harbor's good too. I think Harbor's good, but I think Harbor's good when he's paired with another controller, like you know, maybe Brim or Astra.
Yeah, we might see him on some maps.
Yeah, I think Harbor's good, but I don't think he could be the solo controller. I think there are some lineups you could do on Icebox, which are pretty interesting. And I think he does act as a good replacement for Viper in some of these situations. But I would say one of the good things about him is if he's going to be used more, it's at the deficit of Viper. And I say that because I think Viper did get some nerfs as well, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that Harbor will be picked a little bit more.
Totally.
I think Icebox especially, he's quite good on that map, I think, especially paired with... I think Brim would be good as well with Harbor, but again, you know, I'm just...
You're speculating. You're cooking. I think he's one buff.
Let me cook.
He's one buff away.
Let me cook.
Yeah, my bad.
No, but I do think Harbor's good. I don't think he's good enough to be a solo controller, which is a bit of an issue, because, you know, a lot of teams don't like running two controllers, which makes sense. But then again, you know, you kind of have to think about which agents are preferred with some of these players. You know, some of them most likely haven't even touched Harbor since his release. So I think we'll see one or two Harbors, I think, probably.
I think he's also a buff away from being almost a pick all the time. Well, from meta to schedule, let's take a look at the schedule from week 1 to week 5. Initial thoughts, any match that's jumping off the page, the one that's jumping at me just immediately, I mean, I think it's going to be jumping out at everyone, is Guard M80, but we have to wait till week 5 for that one.
Yeah, obviously that's going to be the big one. That's realistically going to be the big test between both of those teams, I think, to see who will finish at kind of the top. Unless M80 just completely spiral, but I think the Guard will be pretty consistent. I think they've shown that. I think realistically the Guard is probably the best team. Now, obviously, in my opinion, I think it'll be interesting to see how kind of the lower tier teams play against some of these big teams. You know, I think G2 Breakthrough, for example, will be quite interesting in week 2. Because I kind of want to see how these, as I said, these kind of smaller teams that we do rate will kind of, when they come up against kind of the big names and the big dogs, will they be able to, you know, get a victory? But
that's Shopify.
We will have to wait and see.
Game on week 4 too, and even
every
the G2
game's a banger.
Shopify,
really. Every game is a banger.
Man, every day you're gonna have, like, every week you're gonna have one really, really good game that stands out above the rest. I think, like FAZE G2 right off the rip. That's got to be the one for week 1. I mean, speaking of week 1, let's prediction time. Let's dial in. We'll go Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Let's give our predictions. FAZE G2. I got to give it to G2.
I give it to
DSG.
G2 as well.
Yeah, I mean, that one's easy. Guard DSG, do we even have to say it? I think it's guard, right? Unless you're going to go crazy here.
Oh, no, certainly not. Guard win.
You're keeping it good.
100%.
Cool.
Yeah.
We're moving to Thursday. TSM dark ratio. I mean, based on my power rankings, I have to go TSM. Based on yours, there's some room here for you, I think.
Ooh.
Yeah, I don't know.
Ooh, okay. Oh God. See, I've still got TSM higher than dark ratio, so I will say TSM.
Okay.
But I don't know. So I will just say
That's not a prediction.
I'm not 100. I'll say TSM. I'll say TSM.
Okay.
It's fine.
Okay.
I'll say TSM.
And then, when I'm right and your ends up being right, then we'll talk about it. But if that goes the other way, we'll skip it next week.
All
We
right.
control what happens. Breakthrough Oxygen. Man, I think that one's going to be closer than people think.
I think Breakthrough
Oxygen
will
have
win.
some good pieces. Yeah, it's got to be Breakthrough. I
think
completely
Breakthrough will
agree.
win, yeah.
Friday, I mean, that's looking like an easy prediction day.
Yeah,
I think.
Shopify. I mean, yeah, it's
I
you don't
agree.
even really need to play those.
Yeah.
Honestly, those games pretty much done before we even say anything. So, I think those games are a write off realistically. Turtle Troops are good though. I think Turtle Troops are good. I think they're very highly underrated. But we shall wait and see. I don't think they'll beat Shopify, but maybe some of the other teams
that would be crazy.
Pull a victory out against, but we'll have to wait and see for that. But I don't see them taking down Shopify.
Yeah, I agree. Well, those are predictions, and that means that's the show. So you guys better stay tuned because the matchups are coming in real soon.